Hello, everyone. Come on in. We are going to get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Linda Peavy, and I am the owner of LaPav Consulting, LLC, and I am going to be your host for this evening. Please welcome. I am in Ohio. So let me know that you can hear me and that you can see me okay. All right. So let me know if you can see me and hear me okay. You can put your response into the chat. So again, let me just know that you can see me. I should be large on your screen. So let me know if I'm large on your screen and if you can hear me okay. So again, I am Linda Peavy, and I just want to welcome everyone today. I am so glad that you decided to join me tonight. We are going to provide some really great information for you about funding your nonprofit or your small business. So again, I'm in Ohio. So if you want to just let me know where you're coming in from, let me know what state, shout out your state or your city. Let me know. I see Las Vegas, New York, Georgia. Lots of Georgians in the house, Baltimore. Hey, Mexico. Texas, South Florida, Delaware, Illinois. Well, this is fantastic. So we're going to get started because I have a lot in store for you. When I tell you I have the tea and the teapot, I have the tea and the teapot. So I am just so excited for you to be with me here tonight. I'm going to share my screen so we can get started because again, I have so much information in store for you so that you can really empower yourself to be able to raise funds for your nonprofit or your small business. And speaking of nonprofits, while I shift over to my shared screen, let me know if you are a nonprofit or if you are a small business, and some of you have both. So let me know if you're a small business or a nonprofit, or if you have both. We have a lot of both. We have small business, nonprofit. I'm going to switch over and share my screen. And the first thing I'm going to do is show you just a small commercial so that you know a little bit more about me and my company and who I am. So we're going to go through like a little 30-second commercial, and then we're going to get right into the webinar. So let me share my screen. So you should be able to see my screen, and we are going to get started.
Hi, I'm Linda Peavy, owner of LaPav Consulting. My passion is to place your organization on the path to excellence. Are you struggling to communicate your message, reach target audiences, or secure funding? From marketing communications to grant writing, we achieve your goals. We've worked with high-profile clients and have secured $17 million in funding for charter schools and nonprofits. Call today to discuss what your success looks like and how LaPav Consulting can help.
All right, great. So that's a little bit about me. And just to start off with some housekeeping, we do have a little over an hour presentation for you. You will have questions certainly as I go through the presentation. So please just put them into the Q&A. If you forget, you can put them in the chat because after I end, and I always make this promise, I go through all of the questions and I answer them live. So definitely use the Q&A or the chat to ask your questions. My wonderful executive assistant is on with me today, Erica. That's the photo you see, and she's going to take care of any technical issues that we might have. Hopefully we won't have any, but she's been great and she's there to help me out through the webinar. All right, so let's get started. So hopefully you are here tonight to learn about grant writing for your Black-owned business or your Black-led nonprofit. So hopefully you're in the right place. Just want to make sure that you are in the right place today. And again, I'm Linda Peavy. I've owned LaPav Consulting. This is literally my 14th year. And I'm going to share just a little bit more information about me so that you know who your host is today. And for 13 years now, I've been writing grants, grant management, proposal development, fund development, and in every kind of area you can imagine in terms of the kinds of grants that I've written for, from educational programs to jobs development, religious programming, like low income educational programming, curriculum resources. I've worked with so many schools, salaries, innovative programming. And yes, I have secured, I always make that distinction. It's one thing to write, it's another to secure. So I've secured over $17 million in funding and business development over the course of those 13 years. So I am here to really show you the process of how it's done. And it is a process. It is more than just looking at a grant and downloading the application and filling it out and thinking that you're going to get those funds. There is a process to it that I want to be able to show you tonight. And so not only have I written grants, but I have written the request for proposals. So the grant application, I've been hired to write grant applications. I've been hired to score the grant applications, to do consulting, to do partnership building, which we'll talk a little bit about later, because that is so key, is developing those partnerships that will then make it much easier for a funder to approve your application. Grantee report writing right after you get the grant is so important, to write that application that talks about how you utilize the funds. I've written those reports. And then of course, I've given a lot of different workshops for the Urban League and also for COSI, the Council of Smaller Enterprises, which is here in the Cleveland area. And so, yes, I do have a small business right now. So again, it's my 14th year, but at one time I served as the executive director of a nonprofit. So I feel your pain for all of my beautiful nonprofits out there. I know how difficult it is to get funding, and especially to apply for the grants and then get those grant rejection letters. Like, we hate those grant rejection letters. So I know where you are. I've been in both positions, and I know how difficult it is to be able to secure funding. And it's so easy to get very frustrated. But again, I'm here to show you the process and to share literally some secrets to you that you will be able to utilize to help move you towards getting the funding that you want. So again, how did I get here? How did I get to the point where I was able to secure over $17 million? Well, I served as a marketing director years ago for a traditional publishing house. And I was the executive director of that publishing house. I quit after, I would say it was maybe 10 years. And then I opened up my own company, Appendices Consulting. One of the first jobs I had was to become executive director of this nonprofit. And so it was a contract position, but guess what happened? Like, literally the first week I was there, I was told that I was going to have to write a grant application to literally secure my own salary, right? So talk about literally being like thrown to the wolves. I had zero grant writing experience. And I was told to write a grant to literally save my own job, which is something that they had not told me in the interview process. But I loved the job. I loved the work. And so I learned how to do this. And as I learned how to do it, so can you. And so that's how I got into grant writing, really was working for this nonprofit and having to secure grants to save not only my job, but to save the nonprofit. And what I learned, and this is really critical, is that how you write that grant application and the resources that you use and the partnerships that you develop, they're directly linked to whether or not you're going to get the funding. And it's about, again, more than just looking at the application and writing down information about your company and sending it in. There is a process and there is a way in which you have to write, which I'll show you that as well. And so again, there's a process, right? And I'm here to show you what that process is. So we're going to go over 3 different areas of funding. I'm going to show you what to write in your grant application. I'm going to show you how to write in your grant application, which really is going to position you as the best grant candidate, because you know there's so much competition out here for grants. So you have to write in a way in which showcases what is unique about you. And then it's about getting your application noticed, because there's tons of applications that come in to the various funders. So what are some of the secrets that really will showcase your application and have someone, take it out of that pile and read it and really be interested in what you're having to say about why you deserve the funding. So those are the three areas we're going to cover. So why this class? Like Black nonprofits and entrepreneurs, you need help with funding, especially the startup organizations. And there's so much misinformation out there about grants and grant writing and grant funding. And I say this all the time, there's a difference between someone who writes grants and a professional grant writer. I'm a professional grant writer. And so I hear all the time that people say, oh, I'm a startup, I can't get grants. I'm just at the idea stage. I haven't even opened up my nonprofit yet. We haven't even engaged in a single program. Or I just started my business and I really haven't secured a lot of revenue yet. So I'm being told there's no grant money for me. And that's just not true, right? As a startup, you can secure grant funding. We'll talk about that as well. And so I'm here to help you because grant writing can be expensive. So for a seasoned grant writer, we charge anywhere between $100 to $200 an hour to write grants. And so it can be a costly endeavor. So through what I'm going to teach you tonight, you will have in your hands the skills to start your journey. It's impossible for me to help all of you, right? To help everyone write grants. So instead, I provide these webinars as a way to give back to the community and to empower you to be able to really take this information and move forward with the process. So that's why I offer these free webinars. And so before we even start talking about the process of grant writing, there's a couple of things that really completely change the landscape of grants as we know it right now. And one was COVID-19, right? So before COVID-19, it was almost unheard of for a small business to get grant funding, almost unheard of. However, there was a shift that was created. So with COVID-19, we saw a lot of small businesses going under, like they could not survive, not having any clients, not being able to implement their services. A lot of nonprofits just was unable to function any longer. And so there was a lot of money, there was a big pool of money that was placed by foundations into these emergency COVID funds is what they called it. Now we're not in that emergency stage anymore, but we're in what's called a recovery stage. So yes, there's still COVID-19 money available that will ask you to talk about how did COVID-19 affect your business or your nonprofit? How are you going to be able to use the grant money to help shore up your resources? So it's still available. A lot of organizations have had to pivot their focus. I work with one organization called One More Wave, where they provided like surf therapy, ocean therapy to veterans. And of course, in COVID-19, that was shut down. A lot of the beaches were shut down. And they pivoted. I helped them pivot to an online course where they were able to share information to disabled veterans that would provide a lot of the same camaraderie that they were getting in those sessions on the beach. And so a lot of organizations simply had to pivot. I know a lot of church ministries, as you know, had to go online, and many of you are still online. I know I have a lot of churches with me tonight. And so many of you are still online, but you're just now beginning to open your doors up again. So there was a lot of change that happened. And so COVID-19 funding is still available to help you fund a lot of those changes that took place over the course of 20 and 21. And so the second incident that I want to talk about that truly shifted money in terms of what is available for Black-owned businesses and nonprofits was the George Floyd incident. And so after George Floyd, after that incident took place, you had so many organizations, many Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, some of the largest foundations in the country that wanted to do something. They wanted to help. They wanted to somehow address this issue of racial injustice and what we call diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so the easiest way for many of these organizations to help, if you can imagine, it was to pour money right into avenues and areas where it could be provided to Black-owned businesses, and also Black-led nonprofits. And so for many of these organizations who had the money, this was the easiest way for them to help this cause. And so that's why now, more so than ever before, it is easier for you to get money as a Black-owned organization or as a Black-led nonprofit than it has, to me, than it has ever been, because of what happened after George Floyd, and these organizations really wanting to make sure that there is money set aside to somehow, address diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so before we start into the grant application, I just want to go over some grant basics, because some of you may understand what a grant is, some of you may not. The most important thing that you need to know is that grants are not paid back, right? It's a sum of money given by a government or any other organization for a particular purpose, but they're not paid back. And again, pre-COVID-19, it was mainly nonprofits getting funding. If you were 501c3, and that's really important, being that 501c3. But again, due to COVID-19, now you have for-profit, you have entrepreneurs getting grant money. Something I do want to mention about the 501c3s is that if you are a nonprofit, you must get your 501c3 to really be able to get grant funding. I know you might have heard of fiscal agents. So a fiscal agent is an organization that has a 501c3 that you place as your fiscal agent. So it means that whatever grant money that might come to you must go through that fiscal agent, must go through that nonprofit, because they have their 501c3 and you don't. But it's one of the reasons why, if you're going to be serious about getting grant money, you have to have your 501c3. And so right now, from what I understand, is about a two-month process, a 2 to 3 month process to get that. What is a 501c3? It's a tax-exempt charitable organization designation only by the Internal Revenue Service, right? Only the IRS can deem you as a 501c3. And so as a nonprofit, you're going to need that 501c3 in order to get grant funding. If you are and I get this question a lot, if you're a small business, no, you're not getting a 501c3. The 501c3 is just for nonprofit organizations. And so the grant application, of course, that's the proposal. It's the same term, application proposal. That's just the formal document that you're going to be completing in order to get your grant funding. All right, so moving right along. All right, so first we're going to talk about preparing to apply. So as I mentioned before, this is not just about you looking at a grant application and completing it and then sending it off. You have to prepare for the process of writing a grant. At the end of the day, you're trying to get free money, right? So isn't it worth you preparing for the process of getting grants? And I'm a professional editor also. So one of the things I talk about all the time is, if you're going to start writing grant applications, just do a very basic review of writing, right? And so there's 5 basic writing skills: proper spelling, good reading comprehension, sentence and paragraph structures, knowledge of different types of writing. But to me, one of the most important is editing and rewriting, because the last thing you want to do, right, is send in an application with a lot of grammatical errors. You don't want to do that, people. You may have a beautiful application otherwise, but if I can't get through it because of spelling errors, it takes from the overall message of the application. So review your basic writing skills. And whether you are a professional writer or not, I'm going to give you an article that it is guaranteed to improve your writing skills. So I would absolutely recommend everyone to download this article. It's called Improve Writing Skills Dramatically by Doing These 15 Things. And it's by Grammarly. So if you don't know, Grammarly is an editing software package that you can use to help improve your writing. And so the link should be put into the chat right now. for you to be able to grab this article. Again, it is improve writing skills dramatically by doing these 15 things. And for those of you who want Grammarly, the good news is the regular version of Grammarly is free. So you should have this implemented as a part of your Word. Even if you don't have Word, if you have Mac, whether it's Mac or Word, you need to have Grammarly installed because it's going to help your writing. Now, I have the professional version of Grammarly, which I think is maybe about $120, $130 a year. But here's the great news. If you are a nonprofit and you have your 501c3, so if you're a nonprofit, the professional version of Grammarly is available to you free of charge until the end of the year. So you already are getting ready to save $130 because you're going to go to the website that's being put into the link. And if you are a nonprofit, you can get the professional version of Grammarly for free. So already you've saved $130. So be sure you do that. And again, it doesn't matter if you are a professional writer, Grammarly will help you, and this article will help you as well. All right, so again, we're preparing to apply, right? So what else do you need to do to prepare to apply for grant applications? You need to get your documentation in order. So your EIN is your employer identification number. You have to have an employer identification number. Your 501c3 document, again, that's your tax exempt determination letter. Again, don't use a fiscal agent. Your certificate of incorporation, right? Your bylaws. Also, and this is key, your state certification. Your state certification means that you are legally able to do business in that state. And I always share this story. I was doing a webinar about a month ago now. A young lady came on and she said, Linda, you're so on point, because I was applying for a grant application and there were multiple applicants. And she said, I was the only one that got the grant because I was the only one that was able to show that I had my state certification and that I was in good standing to do business in your state. Whether you're a nonprofit or whether you are a business, you need to make sure that you have your state certification. And to do that, you can go to your Secretary of State's website in whatever state you're in. Be sure you check it to make sure that you're in good standing to do business, because many applications require that state certification. You want your list of board of directors, of course, your list of your staff, letters of support. I talk about this before you begin the grant writing process because it takes time to get your letters right. You want to be able to ask people who you know, excuse me, whether they are past supporters, whether or not they're people that you potentially will be partnering with. If they know of you and the work that you've done and your ability to do well in this nonprofit or this business, have them write letters of support. You don't have to already be in business, right? They can write that based on their history of you and of your work ethic. So make sure you start getting those letters of support. The audited financial statement, right? You need your financial statements. Now, if you're brand new, you won't have them. But if you are a seasoned organization, you should have audited financial statements, at least after you've been in business for 2 years. Your current operating budget. So again, even if you're just starting out, you should have an operating budget, because that way you will know what your revenues and your expenses are expected to be for the upcoming year. And again, a list of any other funders. I say this all the time. No foundation wants to be your only funder. They want to make sure that other foundations maybe have also supported you, whether it's through money or an in-kind donation. So anytime you've gotten any kind of support, again, it doesn't have to be money. It could be an in-kind donation, right? Maybe an organization donated furniture or supplies to you. Make sure you have a list of those funding sources, because it will let the funder, the foundation, know, okay, that you have also been supported by other organizations. And so now we're going to talk about, like, what do you write? What will you write in this application? So I'm going to go through what you typically find in a grant application, and then we'll talk about each component bit by bit. So you have your summary abstract, your mission, vision, history, leadership, description of the organization, your statement of need or your target market. We'll talk about that. a description of your program or your project, your community partnerships. Those are critical. We'll talk about those later. Your outputs, your outcomes. In other words, what is the impact of your program or your service, right? Of your company. It doesn't have to be a project or a program. If you're a small business, what are you trying to accomplish with what it is that you sell or that you offer? Your program, project, your staff, leadership. Now, this leadership refers to your board of directors because they're part of your leadership too. Your budget and sustainability. So these are the components that we're going to talk about. First, we'll start with summary abstract of your proposed project. Now, the one thing I want you to know about the summary is that you're going to write it very last. It is the last component that you'll write. Why? Because it includes the most compelling parts of your entire grant application. So once you write the grant application, you'll want to go back to the beginning and write the summary. Now, the summary typically comes first. It's one of the first parts of the grant application that you'll see, but don't be confused. Be sure that you write it very last because really this is your selling tool. You want to wrap up the most compelling parts of that application and put it into your summary, or sometimes it's called an abstract. Your mission vision, right? So many of you probably have a mission statement, whether or not you are a nonprofit or a small business, you still need a mission and a vision statement. What's the difference, right? The mission, this is what you're doing now. These are your aims, your goals. Your vision is what would you like to have happen in the future if you meet your mission? So if you are accomplishing a mission, what do you want to have happen in the future based on the services or your program or your projects? That's what your vision is. Make sure you align it to the funder. And this is key. So often, this is a mistake that many organizations do. They hear about a large foundation like, let's say, Dell or one of the major foundations like the Ford Foundation or the Gates Foundation, and think, oh my gosh, they have all this money, okay, let me apply. You have to make sure that funder's areas of interest align to your organization. So if they're saying we are only funding foundation right now, and you know that your organization is strictly geared towards like workforce development or youth development, it's not aligning with what the funder wants to fund. And so that's not going to be an application that you want to complete. You have to do your research. So research the history of the organization to make sure that you know what their area of interest is. That is so important. That is one of the easiest ways to get your application rejected. If that alignment isn't there between what your mission is and the mission of that foundation, your application is not going to go very far. So be sure that there is an alignment there. All right, so the next component is history. So here's what I want you to know about history, because many of you are starting up. You're just starting your nonprofit or your small business. And you may think, well, I don't have a history. Every organization has a history. Even if you talk about what was the impetus for you wanting to start your small business or your nonprofit. So you may just now be starting, but what happened? Like what happened in your life that wanted you to say, okay, I want to open up this small business, or I want to open up this nonprofit to be able to serve a particular target. So for example, let's take a principal who maybe she's retired, but she wants to open up a nonprofit that provides reading tutoring to kids after school. Well, this is new to her. She's just opening up the nonprofit, but what can she say about her history? She can talk about the fact that, well, for 20 years, she's been teaching kids. So in her teaching kids, she wanted to be able to help them through this nonprofit. That becomes a part of the history too. Her experience was the impetus for her opening up the organization. So you use that information as a part of your history. So for the leadership development piece, that's about your executive leadership or your board of directors, your CEO, your COO. That's what you're going to talk about there when they ask for leadership. Next, you're going to talk about the description of your organization. So this is where you're going to take the track record, right, of working with a target population. So this is for the season organizations. And then talk about what were your success rates? What were your success factors? Like what experience do you have with the subject matter? But again, even if you're new, think about that principle, right? Focus on the experience that you had with that target population. In her instance, it was kids, it was students, K through 12 students. So that's her target population, but she was a school principal. So that's what she's going to talk about in terms of describing the organization. She can talk about her experience in working with those kids and the fact that maybe she had great success as a principal, right? So even though the nonprofit hasn't started, she's still going to talk about her success rate of working with those students, because it becomes important for the funder or the foundation to know what is your background, what do you bring to the table. Again, you're trying to set yourself apart from all of these other organizations. And at the end of the day, it's about you. It's about your history. You're the unique person. You're the unique entity. No one is going to be able to talk about your organization like you. No one has your experiences. No one. So that is that unique piece that you're going to bring to your application. All right, next, the statement of need. So now you're talking about what is the problem? Like, what is it that you're trying to address? And you have to keep in mind that there's always a problem. It doesn't matter if you're a nonprofit. It doesn't matter if you're a small business. And I like to use this example of a small business opening up a cupcake shop in a downtown area. Now you may say, what's the problem there? Like, what problem is she solving by opening up this cupcake company in this downtown area? Well, maybe there's no other bakeries within a mile of that area. And if she's downtown, the problem is downtown businesses don't have maybe a premium upscale bakery. So that's the problem that she's solving. She's being able to address the issue of there not being an upscale bakery within 1 mile of the downtown area. So regardless of what you do, whether you're a nonprofit or a small business, think about what you are trying to resolve with your product, right? Or your service, or what it is that you're bringing to the community. And whatever that is, right? You can still connect it back to the to the funder's areas of interest. So let's take the cupcake bakery store. Well, in opening up this store, she's hiring people. This is where you have to really be unique. She's hiring people for her store. So what is that? That's workforce development, right? So the foundation, where is the foundation? When you start researching them and determine what it is that they want to fund, they may not say, I want to fund a cupcake company in downtown Cleveland, but they might say, I want to fund workforce development. I want to fund organizations that are bringing jobs to the community. And if she's opening up a cupcake company, she has to hire people, right? So she could apply for that grant under the area of workforce development. So how do you find out what the funder's areas of interest is, right? There's two main ways. Check their 990s. So you can check a nonprofit's 990s, because that 990 will have typically a section in the back of the 990 that is a list of other organizations that they have funded. And so that will give you some idea if they're funding an area that aligns with your mission. So if you look at that 990, you see, oh my gosh, they funded other veterans organizations, and you're a veteran, you have a veterans organization that's serving veterans. Okay, so that's the alignment. So you know that that's a potential funder for you. Or you can go to the funder's website. The funder's website will have a slew of information for you to find out what is their area of interest. What is it that they want to fund? Now, here's the problem. 90% of foundations do not have a website. And I'll say that again, 90% of foundations don't have a website. So how do you find out the information? You go to the 990. How do you get to the 990? I have some more tea for you. You go to this website called open990.org. And on open990.org, it will give you access to probably every 990 that there is available. And it's free. Okay, it's free. So if you go to open990.org, you will be able to access and pull down 990s free of charge. I told you I had tea for you. You will be able to get access to those 990s and see whether or not they have funded organizations that are near you, that align with what you're aligning to. So that becomes key for you. And just keep in mind, as you're writing, how are you resolving that problem different or better than anyone else? You may be the best cupcake maker, in Northeast Ohio, right? When you talk about your history, you may say this is your grandmother's recipe, and you want to be able to, have this establishment in downtown Cleveland where you're providing this service. It's about more than just baking cupcakes, right? It's about more than that. You have to talk about the impetus. You have to talk about how you're resolving a problem, no matter what your service is. You could be building a better mousetrap, no matter for you small businesses, no matter what it is. You need to talk about how you're resolving an issue. Now, what is your target population? So for the lady with the cupcake company, her population was businesses within a mile of her store in downtown Cleveland. So the population is simply, who are you helping? It's as simple as that. Demographics, right? Trends, gender, maybe you're focusing on a particular gender or ethnicity or a particular income. Maybe you're targeting underrepresented communities. Maybe you're targeting senior citizens, so you will look at age. And one of the best ways to get any type of target population information is your US Census Fast Facts. I absolutely love it. I use it all the time. So US Census Fast Facts, so when you're developing the information, because almost every grant application is going to ask you about your target audience, your target population. And you want to talk about those demographics, right? You want to talk about what they look like, because what they look like will then lead you to talk about how you're able to help them. All right, and then we have the statement of need. So sometimes the grant application will say the target population, sometimes they will say statement of need, right? So either way, it is the problem. Like, what is the problem? What is the problem that you're trying to resolve? And who is that population? So I wrote a Toshiba of America grant for a urban high school, and it was about being able to fund an environment science class in the high school. And so the urban high school, it was the 11th grade class, and it was filled with underrepresented students or African-American students. Was it going to attend this class that we needed funding for? And Toshiba of America, that was a STEM grant, as you can imagine, with Toshiba. And so what was the need, right? What was the need? What was the problem? Well, there's a lack of minority students in STEM careers. That's a problem. We wanted to increase the student achievement for minority students in that class because they were underachieving. That's a problem. What was the target population? It was the underrepresented minority high school students. That was your target population, because they're the ones that wanted to attend this environment science class. So I have two needs and then the target population. And so this is how I wrote up the statement of need. Now, this is a synopsis. This was just one paragraph. I extrapolated it to many different pages, but this is just one paragraph. And this is what I wrote. So STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, and math disciplines for minority students can lead to meaningful careers. We know that. Yet, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, those are my stats, in 2011, the number of African Americans employed in STEM occupations was 8% or less. That's another problem. According to 2009 figures, only 1.9% of African Americans held careers as environmental scientists and geoscientists. That's really a problem. Our course, right? How are we addressing the problem? Our course is an avenue to close the achievement gap while nurturing students' interest in science. And here I take it back to the funders' areas of interest. The school supports Toshiba's belief that science and mathematics are exciting fields in which all students can succeed with the proper tools and instruction. The grant will assist us in achieving those efforts. So you have my stats, you have my target population, you have the need, and then you have me wrapping it around and aligning it back to Toshiba's mission statement. And this is what you have to do, whether or not you're a small business or a nonprofit. The other avenue that you're going to have to talk about is really telling your story. Grant writing is all about storytelling. Who is my audience and what is the message I want to share with them? You have to, again, what I call mine, your own experience again. What brought you to opening up the nonprofit? What led you to opening up the small business? What you have to do though is, don't make yourself the hero. Put your target, put your target population at the center of the story and not you. I have to take a sip. If you notice in that story that I shared, it wasn't about the school. Where was the focus in that paragraph? Let's go back. I want you to put into the chat who you think is the focus of this paragraph. Who do you think is the focus of the paragraph? Put in the chat who you think is the focus of this paragraph. Let's see what we have. Exactly. So those of you who said students, absolutely right. I talk about the students, right? I talk about how students, right, the interest of the students can lead, to meaningful careers, right? It's about how you want the student to excel after taking this environmental science course, right? How they can perhaps become scientists or geoscientists. It's about how you want them to excel. It's not about you or the school. The school is applying for the grant, but the focus of the story is the student and not the school. And so that's what you have to do. Whomever you're trying to serve, you put them at the center of the story, even if you're that cupcake company, because you want these business people, right, at lunchtime to have access to the best cupcakes, in Northeast Ohio, right? Put them at the center of the story. Highlight a struggle, right? A story without a challenge is not interesting, right? So when you read back to that particular scenario, I talk about the fact that there's so few minorities in sciences, right? And so that's the issue. You want to talk about that. Now, also, when you're telling your story, you have to talk about how lives can be changed, right? So if you can imagine if students were able to graduate and focus on STEM and get careers as these geoscientists, they're going to be successful. So you have to talk about how you are changing lives, or what is the outcome of what you're trying to achieve. And that may sound easier for nonprofits, but let's take the cupcake company again, right? So if she's successful, right, who knows how that will benefit the community, how that will benefit her community, how that will change the lives of her family, right? How that will, seeing that there's a successful Black-owned bakery in downtown, that might encourage another Black-owned company to come within that region. So you really have to talk about how you're going to change outcomes through getting this grant money. And always look at the human factor, the core values, right? You have to use real examples, testimonials, case studies. These could be people that have gone through your program if you're a nonprofit, or people that have dined at your restaurant. What are their testimonials? This is one of the easiest things you can do, is to ask your current customers or the people that you serve, just give you a testimony. And the best way of doing that is through video. Literally, use your cell phone. You can have them use their cell phone and say, look, I just need a minute testimonial. Just use your cell phone, talking to the camera for a minute. And you can use those videos on your website, in your grant application, because you will have that information. And it's so easy to get. You don't have to produce expensive videos. I can't tell you how many times I have been with a client, a nonprofit, and we've gone into a funder's office and we talk about the program and we talk about how important the program is. But I'll tell you, once they see that video of those testimonials or those case studies, it's just a game changer. So whatever you try to do, please incorporate videos into your testimonials and into the area where you're trying to showcase your services and prove that you are successful. Now, again, in talking about how to write, you have to make a decision. Are you going to ask for operating money or program project money? Keeping in mind that as of 2020, only about 32% of foundations provide general operating support to their grantees. So what is general operating support? That means you decide where you want to place the money. You have an operating budget, whether it's salaries or IT, or maybe you need to pay rent or utilities. You decide where the money goes if you get an operating grant. Whereas if you get a program project grant, you have to be specific. That money has to be applied towards whatever your program or project is. And it's not just for nonprofits, right? If you have a for-profit, if you have a small business, let's say you're a restaurant, and you want to start providing delivery services, well, that's a new project, right, of that restaurant. Well, let's say you want to start a takeout menu. That's a project of the restaurant. So don't think of program or projects as specifically for nonprofit organizations. You have to decide really, where's your greatest need? If you're just starting, you may need operating money, right? Because you don't even have a program or project yet. You may need staff, you may need a facility, you may need IT, you may need utilities. So you may be inclined to look at operating dollars. However, that still doesn't mean that you can't apply for program project dollars, because that's where most of the money is given. But really take a look at where your greatest needs are. If you're a functioning nonprofit and you're seasoned, you need to decide, well, do I need to put money in operations because I really need to shore up my infrastructure, or do I really need to place money in this particular project or program? So you do an assessment of where your greatest needs are. Next is the description of the program or the project. Again, if you are seasoned, talk about your track record, like talk about why you've been successful. Address the need, always address that need. Of course, you're going to detail all of your activities. And if it's a new method, you're going to talk about why it should work. Let's say you're in a school and you want to buy curriculum for, let's say, project-based learning. You want to make sure that project-based learning, that the research you use on project-based learning proves that it is going to be helpful in your classroom. Let's say you're teaching underrepresented fifth graders. Well, that means you want to make sure that the research that you put into the application on project-based learning states that it's been proven to increase the academic performance of underrepresented students. So just make sure if you're doing research, you're comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. And again, talk about in your activities, how are you resolving the issue? And then be realistic, because if it's going to take you 6 months to complete the program, don't put 3 months because you think it's going to appease the funder. Put in a realistic timeline for your project to be completed. Now, community partnerships, I think, is one of the most important areas for you as a nonprofit or a small business in order to secure funding. Why is it important? You have to have partners in order to flourish in whether it's your business or your nonprofit. You can look at third-party vendors as partners, right? So for example, the teacher that wants to start this tutoring program for the K through 12 students. Well, I know in Ohio, if you have any type of after school program, you have to feed the students. So here, the Cleveland Food Bank is a huge partner with organizations because they provide free food to students after school. So that could be considered a community partner. And I hear a lot, especially from small businesses, that say, well, I don't know if I want to engage partners because I don't want them to take over. This is not a financial arrangement. This is simply, how can you utilize partners as support for what you're trying to accomplish. And it's great for new nonprofits, right? Or new businesses to be able to partner with a more seasoned organization, because it's just going to give you more credit to your organization. So for example, in that Toshiba of America grant, we partner with the Cleveland Metro Parks, which is like one of the greatest metro parks in the country. And so they signed off on an agreement saying that, yes, the students will be able to come to our Rocky River Reservation and take these macroinvertebrate samples. And part of the classes will be in our classrooms and part of the classes will be at the school. And so it was a partnership. It was very impressive to Toshiba that this one small little school was able to partner with, the great Cleveland Metro Parks. So find out ways in which you can partner. And again, it doesn't have to just be for nonprofits. It can be for your small business as well. There was a music program that I worked on, a grant for a music program, a third grade class where they wanted to teach the students violin. And we were going to partner with the Cleveland Orchestra, like literally considered like one of the greatest orchestras in the world. And some of their musicians were going to come after school and help teach the third graders violin. So partner with the community organization, especially a seasoned one, a well-respected one. And these are just some of the ideas that you can have for partnerships. Your urban league, your universities, HBCUs in your area, civic organizations, Greek organizations, 100 Black Men of America, YWCA, YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, the Ohio Minority Supplier Development Council, Minority Business Assistance Centers, right? The Ohio Small Business Development Center, which is part of the Urban League in here, but I bet you in your state, you also have a Small Business Development Center. So partner is one of the most important parts of the application. And I guarantee you your foundation or your funders are going to ask you about your partnerships. And so as an example, these are some of the national organization that you might want to partner with based on what kind of organization you have. And this came from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, their Office of Minority Health. So these are somewhat geared towards health, but this is just a list of so many organizations that you can partner with at the local level. So even though these are national organizations, they have local affiliates. So do your research and find out, how you can partner with some of these just tremendous organizations. And so next you're going to talk about, like, how do you know if your program is working? Well, those are your outputs, your outcomes, and your impact. And what's the difference? Because you might be asked for all three. And there is a difference between outputs, outcomes, and impact. Your outputs, those are your immediate results. Like, this is what's going to happen at the end of my program. What are the outcomes? So after the program ends, like, what change is going to happen? What activities will take place as a result of me ending the program? And then your impact looks at your future change, right? What future changes are going to happen as a result of your program? So I have a real quick example here of an ex-offender program where the output was 100 prisoners. They're being trained before they get released from jail, right? So 6 months before they're released from jail, they're being trained on a workforce development program. So what is your output? Your output after the program ends, you've got 100 prisoners that received this pre-release training on the workforce development program 6 months before the release. So that's your output. What is your outcome? As a result of those prisoners being trained, they're out of prison now. So you got 100 ex-prisoners. They're going to begin their workforce development program right within 3 months of the release because they had the pre-release training. So that's the outcome. That's the result of the output. Now, what happens in the future? And again, you're forecasting this, right? So this is part of what you're wanting to have happen. So you're writing this information in the grant application as if it is to come. So what is the impact? Well, the impact is that the program is going to reduce the recidivism rate, which is the rate at which ex-prisoners go back to jail, the rate of ex-offenders by 25% within 1 year release. So you're saying as a result of your program and these ex-prisoners being trained in workforce development. It could be soft skills, job skills, resume writing. As a result of that, you're going to decrease by 25% the chance that they will go back to jail. And that is your impact statement. So output, outcome, impact, know the three, because you may be asked for all three. And another way to measure your outcome, and I know you've heard of this before, your SMART goals, right? What are SMART goals? Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. So how do you change a goal into a SMART goal? So here's a regular goal. I want to reduce the poverty rate in Cleveland. Well, that's a huge goal, right? But how can you turn it into a SMART goal where it's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely? So here's the SMART goal. I want to reduce the poverty rate by 5%, that's measurable, in Cleveland for Hispanic children. That's specific. Under the age of 5, that's attainable, that's specific, that's relevant within a 5-year time frame. So you included variables that can be measured. And that's how you change a goal into a SMART goal. And so what are you using? Basically, you're using data, statistics, numerical indicators. And then how do you measure whether or not you're achieving your goal? You use assessment tools, surveys. A lot of you may be familiar with SurveyMonkey, but also Google has, and I don't know if it's free, I think it is like a free survey tool that you can use. If not, it's very inexpensive. But use surveys, do reports, do follow-up interviews with people that you've helped. And don't wait until they've gone through your program, right? Or don't wait until they have already been a customer at your restaurant. Talk to them while they're in your program, while they're going through the program, get their feedback, right? And then do follow-up, extra follow-up interviews. So you want to get as much information as possible to prove that you are succeeding at these SMART goals. And so the next section is project program staff. And here you're just really writing about the program staff. You want to include their bios, because at the end of the day, whomever you put in charge of that product or project or program or part of your small business, they need to be qualified. And so by including the resumes, the foundation or the funder will know, okay, this person is qualified to either run this part of the business or run this part of the project or the program. Put in realistic numbers, right? And then include the leadership, include your board of directors list. That's really important. And I get asked a lot about board of directors. Yes, nonprofits, you need a board of directors. And also, this is something that isn't talked about a lot, but talk about the opportunity for volunteerism for the funder. Like, funders love to be able to be involved in organizations. So in your application, think about ways in which maybe the foundation board or the funder's employees can have some part in what you're providing. If it's that tutoring program, maybe they can volunteer to tutor one night a week. So think about ways in which you really want to involve the funder. And the budget. So the one thing I want to say about the budget, just make sure it's itemized. If you are listing monies for salaries, don't just put $100,000 for salaries. Well, who are you paying for? Show that it's the executive director and your secretary or independent contractors. Be specific and show that the costs are reasonable for your part of the country, right? For your area that you're living in. And reliable sources, look, you can go on Amazon and get estimates. I mean, I've seen it done before. We've done it before. Just make sure that they're reasonable for your part of the country. And you can attach vendor quotes to your grant application. Now, many of you will see that there's a budget narrative asked. So all it is explaining how are you going to utilize the budget. So you've got the budget, excuse me, how are you going to utilize that money to then fund the program? And again, you connect it back to the goal of the program. So while you're indicating, for example, I'm using $50,000 to support the executive director, but that person is going to run the program, which will help us accomplish the goal. So just link it back to the goal. Sustainability. Now, this one is important. I get a lot of questions about this. So what is sustainability? That is, how are you going to continue to run your operations, whether it's your small business or your nonprofit, after you've used the grant money? After you've used the money, how are you going to survive? And this is why, like, no funder wants to be the sole support of your organization, because no grant is guaranteed in year 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. So the next year, you may not get any grant money. How are you going to still sustain your organization? Keeping in mind that only 20% of nonprofit income is even derived from grants. So you've got to have other methods and other means to support yourself. So if it's a school, maybe they have fundraisers, maybe they have a talent show, maybe they sell school merchandise, maybe they have an annual dinner that they provide. You have to think about ways, when you're asked this question, think about other ways in which you can derive income, so that if that grant is used up for the next year, your business or your program won't go under. So that's about writing those alternative fund development methods right into the application. So now we're going to talk about just some ways to get noticed among a sea of applications. One, you want to position yourself for success. It's all about showing your uniqueness, bringing yourself into the picture in terms of the history. Strategize first, research those funders. If it's a foundation that is only, again, supplying money to maybe nonprofits that create motorcycles, and you know that you don't create motorcycles, maybe you provide nonprofit cookbooks, that's not a match. Okay, that's not a match. Gain your partners. That, oh my gosh, if you don't hear anything else, please gain your partners. It is so important to have partnerships. And so you want to start the relationship building. Meet with the funder first. So I tell people all the time, I sat in a meeting once with quite a few funders, and I heard one director of a foundation say that if I get applications and I spread them out in front of me, and this person here has not contacted me, did not call, did not try to set up a meeting, didn't email me, that application is going in the garbage. Now, that doesn't happen all the time, and that's not across the board, but why not do due diligence and try to meet that funder to explain more about who you are, your passion, your organization, so that doesn't happen. Now, some foundations don't want you to meet with them, and that's fine. They will tell you, no, we're not meeting. We just want you to submit the application. And that's perfectly okay. But if you have the opportunity, meet with the funder, because at the end of the day, think about it. You're the funder. You have a sea of applications. And these 5 people have reached out to you. You've met with them. You know who they are. You know what they're doing. You've heard the stories of people who've been impacted. And these 5, you don't know anything about other than what they have on the paper. Who are you more likely to give funding to? So if at all possible, reach out to that funder. Now, again, the appendices, many grant applications will have appendices where you can include a lot of these documents that I talked about at the beginning, your 501c3, your certificate of incorporation, those letters of support, start those letters early, your board of directors, the research methods, right? The audited financial statement, your current operating budget. And again, if any other support has come your way, create a list of those funders. And again, it doesn't have to be money, it could be in-kind donations. Now, the memorandum of understanding, the MOU, is a document that explains the relationship between your partner and you. So for example, when we worked with the Toshiba of America Foundation, the Cleveland Metro Parks wrote a letter indicating that, yes, we're going to be a partner in this grant. These students are going to come to our location to take a part of their classes, and they're going to come to the Cleveland Metro Parks to take those macroinvertebrate samples out of the Rocky River Reservation. So the MOU talked about what that partnership was going to look like. That really just gave some validity to the partnership. They're not always warranted, but if you have a partner working with you, if at all possible, have them just write out a quick letter to say, yes, we're supporting the organization in the way in which the partnership will. And again, before you write, decide, what are you asking for? Is it general operating support or is it program project support, knowing that most of the money goes to program project support? And keep your question, and please stay until the end because I have a bonus surprise for you at the end, and I'm going to do all of the Q&A. So as I go along, just put your questions in Q&A or in the chat. Now, here's some do's and don'ts. So do create a strategy, right? Link your need to the use of funds. Think like the funder. Funders have limited resources. They want to know who's using the resources most effectively. Do please consider time management. Grants are deadline driven, and especially the federal grants. If they say about 4:59 p.m., the portal shuts down, it shuts down at 4:59 p.m. Make sure that your program or your project really is addressing change. And do have external reviews of your application. Please make sure before you submit your grant application that you let someone else see it. Someone else needs to review it, someone that has some type of mastery of the English language, right? Because you want a second set of eyes, not just for grammar, but for comprehension. So am I reading what you want me to understand? So here are some don'ts. Again, don't use cookie cutter answers based on some template. Don't ask for too much when approaching a funder for the first time. This is really critical. Now, there are grants that specify how much the grant money is for, but many community foundations don't. You ask for a set amount of money, but if you're coming to them for the first time, make sure it's not too much. You don't want to go in asking for $100,000 the first time that you approach them because you're not going to get it. Ask for a smaller amount. I recommend anywhere between $5,000 to $20,000. So that one, you can get approved and get your foot in the door. And then year two, now that they've seen, okay, you can handle a smaller amount, you can ask for a larger amount, but not the first time. You want to establish a good relationship with the foundation first. Don't underestimate time. Start early, please. Don't wait until the last minute to submit. And don't forget to edit. And again, Grammarly.com is your friend. And keep in mind, again, if you are a 501c3 nonprofit, you can get the professional version of Grammarly for free. The letter of introduction, many of you always ask, well, how do I introduce myself to a partner or to the funder? So the letter of introduction is really concise. It's maybe 1 or 2 pages where you're outlining this information. You're talking about an introduction, like who you are, description of the organization, what your need is, what type of program or project that you have. And if it's a small business, what is your service? Don't ask for a dollar amount in this letter. This is really important because the purpose of this letter is not to ask for money. It is to introduce yourself to the funder or to a potential community partner. So you're not asking for money yet. And again, you're going to talk about in this letter, any research and get a reference, right? So when you're trying to get information, you don't want to send to info@abcfoundation.org. Do your research. Again, you can go to the website, but we know that most foundations don't have websites. Go to the 990, right? So I gave you a 990 website that you can go to because you always want to email a name. You always want to email a name. And so again, I talked about giving you the tea in the teapot. Here is the teapot. So this particular website will get you almost any email that's available. If there is an available email, Get Email probably has it. And so if you could put into the chat, www.getemail.io, Erica, this has just been a revelation for me, I have to say. It's just one of the greatest things since sliced bread, as far as I'm concerned. because it has gotten me so many emails of executives, so that when I'm emailing, I'm not sending to, info at, I'm really addressing and communicating with a real person. So I just want to make sure, yes, great, that is put into the chat. Very good, very good. Okay. Now, so some of you, this is just for the small businesses. You may be bidding on a contract, and I've provided workshops to organizations that bid on contracts. So just keep in mind, if you're bidding on like a state or county or city contract, the application is somewhat similar to a grant application, but a little different, where you're going to talk about the summary, mission, history, leadership, description of the organization, the statement of need, the target population. But for the description, you're going to talk about the scope of work, or the work that you're going to provide for the bid. And one thing that I have to tell you, don't underbid drastically. A lot of you may think, well, if I put in what I think is like the lowest bid, I have a better chance of getting it. Actually, you have a worse chance of getting it, because if you underbid drastically, the contractor, they have an idea of what their project should cost. So if they're thinking it's going to cost $1 million to construct a building, and you put into your contract that I'm only bidding $100,000 because I want the project, and they know it should cost around $1 million, they're going to know that you're not qualified and that you don't have the capacity to scale. And so give a reasonable bid based on your organization and the work that you can provide. Don't think about, putting in the lowest number, because usually that will backfire. And so how do you determine which funders are best for you? You have to do grant research. And how do you do grant research? These are 6 or 7 different avenues. So these are grant search engines, right? Most of them are. So with the Foundation Directory Online, this is like the leading source of grant information in the US, the leading source. They have millions, billions of dollars worth of grants on the Foundation Directory Online. They're about $50 a month right now, I think. So if you're on a budget, pay the $50 and get a list of all the grants that you can within the month. Instrumental is a bit more pricey. It's about $170 a month, but they do provide more in-depth information, and I think better matching. Now, grants.gov, that is a free site, and it is the single largest source of federal grants. So they have over 900 grant programs from 26 agencies. If you are a church or a faith-based organization, go to the Lilly Foundation. That's the largest funder of religious organizations in the country. And that's their foundation website, so that's free. If you are an educational organization, go to grantgopher.com, because they have tons of educational grants. And last time I looked, it was free. You may need to pay if you have like maybe one of their services. Grantwatch.com is about $220 a year right now. And they have a lot of last minute grants. Grantwatch.com is actually about $160 for the year. They're cheaper. And they have a lot of last minute grants. So if you are a minority organization, which you guys are, please, you have to go to urbanawarenessusa.org. They're just fabulous, because they will send out to you regular grants that are geared towards minority organizations. Now, they're free to get some of the information. They have a newsletter, which is free, but you do have to pay for some of their more sophisticated services, but absolutely urbanawarenessusa.org. And so these are your search mechanisms for how you go in to match to get the perfect funder for you. And so here's some additional business grant information. HelloAlice.com, if you are female-owned business, you have to know about helloalice.com. And right now, because they are changing their methodology. Right now, they're free. I don't think they're going to be free for much longer, but right now it's free. And they give incredible information on grants, the DOT, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, the Facebook Black Creators Grant, Amber Grants for Women, the National Association for the Self-Employed. They have growth grants. Your Minority Business Development Agency, they have business grants. Your small business grant that's given every year by FedEx. And then your small business innovation research, the SBIR grants that are given by the National Institutes of Health. That's a federal grant. So these are just some of your grant research mechanisms there that you want to use to find out who really is a perfect funder for you. And so 2 funding avenues that Black businesses and nonprofits often don't think about are banks. So when you think about a bank and money, like what do you think about? Put in the chat, like what comes to your mind when you think of the word bank and money or funding? Like what do you think about? What comes to your mind? Let's see what you're saying. Right, loans, lines of credit, loans. Well, let me tell you that banks provide huge amounts of grants every single year. They're not just for loans. Most banks have what's called either a vice president for community development, or a VP of community service. And they have discretionary funding capabilities where they can write checks. Now, a lot of banks also have foundations that you can go through. So don't think of banks as just for loans. They have grant money that they give out. You just have to know how to get it. And so typically, start with your branch manager, but he or she may not have this information. It's best to go through the regional office and make sure, or unless a bank is headquartered in your city, and find out who their VP of community reinvestment is, or community development, any type of community relations. There's usually personnel there that you're going to want to meet with to talk about grants. And then I talked earlier about workforce development. Many of you don't think of applying for workforce development grants because you don't think that's the area or the position that you're in, but you are. Like anytime you are creating jobs, you're in workforce development, whether it's for your nonprofit or your small business. Apply for workforce development grants, because you are creating jobs, and that's what workforce development is all about. So expand your mind when it comes to what you're going to apply for when you're approaching grants and grant applications. It's not just for what you may have initially thought, like programs or projects. Literally, if you are creating jobs, think about workforce development. That's one little known area that can potentially end in grant money for you. And so I just want to thank you so much for staying with me until the end. I do have a surprise for you. And then afterwards, I'll answer all of the Q&A, because I know we have a lot of questions, and I always promise I answer every Q&A live. But as I mentioned, I have been in this work for 14 years. This is the 14th year of Appendices Consulting. And I have secured $17 million worth of grants for nonprofits, for small businesses. And so for me, it is about showing you how you can do this yourself, like how you can literally, using your hands and your mind and the knowledge that I'm giving to you, be able to write grants, successful grants on your own. So that is key. You can write grants that are $10,000, $50,000, $100,000, just like I have. And so what I've done, I've created a grant writing course, and it's called Grant Writing for Non-Writers, Keys to Winning Grant Proposals. And as you see in the title, it's grant writing for non-writers. It's for those of you who are not professional writers, but you still need grant money. You need $10,000, $50,000, $100,000. You can do this. You can learn how to write grants so that you're able to fund your organizations or your nonprofits. And so the grant writing course literally is for those of you who you want in-depth help. I mean, this webinar has been great, but if you want step-by-step help to be able to know, how do I write that application? How do I answer this particular question? How do I go through the search portal, right? The grant search portal to match up with the perfect funder, right? How do you save money on grant writing expenses? As I mentioned before, a professional seasoned grant writer is between $100 to $200 an hour. So how can you save money in getting free money, right? Because after all, we're after free money. And for many of you, and I hear from so many of you, you're frustrated. You have written so many applications where you've been rejected. And I understand that because again, I was leading a nonprofit, so I know how that is. And you really want to stop like literally spinning your wheels on this. You want to know what to do and how to do it. And so this course is 12 modules, it's 35 lessons. And I know that people learn differently. So I start every lesson out literally with a video. So you have the video, but it's not just a video, because I hear people saying, oh, I don't want to take any more courses that are just videos. You start with the video, then there's an actual lesson, right? Where there's a narrative where I explain what I'm wanting you to do. So if I'm asking you to write that history of your organization, I talk about it in the video, and there's a written lesson where I show you how to write the history of your organization. How do you develop your target market and what that looks like? How do you develop what your problem statement is? And so you have the video, but you also have the narrative. And this is one of the best things about the course. I provide you with a list of over 400 funders. So at the end of the course, when you have finished the course, you're ready. You are ready to write your grant. And I give you a list of 400 funders in so many different areas, from youth development to education. It's there for you. And so you have that list. I teach you how to write every part of the narrative, basic writing techniques. I teach you how to tell a story, the letter of inquiry, which I haven't even talked about yet. That is taught in depthly into the course. I teach you how to write a budget narrative. There are so many things you need to do before you apply. I talked about some of them. There are others that are critical to you winning grants that you have to be able to do before you send off that one application. And so you have your task, and I give you printables, like you get downloadables. So for every lesson, you get a downloadable lesson. You get the printables, you get a full workbook of every lesson that's in the course. And I give you quizzes, but they're fun quizzes. I mean, they really are. They're actually funny. So you don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, there's quizzes at the end. It's only to help you relearn the information so that you can be better at writing grants, because this is all about you winning free money for your company and for your nonprofit. And then I show you how to do the grant research that we talked about. And here's one of the best parts of the course is that you get actual winning grant examples. So if I'm showing you how to write your history, I am giving you the example of a history section in a grant that I personally wrote and won money for. So every example in this course is from a grant that I won money for. So every example is a successful example. And because I don't want you to just go through the course and feel like, you don't have any support, we have a fantastic Facebook group, I have to say. Excuse me, in the Facebook group, you come into the group, let's say you're writing your grant and you have a question and you want to know, well, how do I answer this question in the grant application? There are students in there that will help you to address it. I'm in there oftentimes and I'm answering questions. And it's great because there are professional grant writers who take the course. And so they're in the private Facebook group and they're answering questions. So it's just, you get the support you need, because I want you to be serious about getting this free money for your organization. So investing a little bit to get a lot. And then I give you bonus group coaching. And the next group coaching session is in April. I think it's April 11th, where once a month you get free group coaching. So you come to me with any questions that you have. You talk about your organization. You talk about what your needs are. You talk about, there may be a grant that you want to apply for and you're not sure about. Come to the group coaching or come to the private Facebook group. And so the 12 modules and 35 lessons with the videos is $3,549. The 30 videos is valued at $599. The funders list, which by itself is worth the price of the course at $500. I give you planners, right? So you can track your grant that you've applied for. I have goal planners to really keep you moving forward. And so you get all of this included. The value is $4,997 and the course is $997. However, for Women's History Month, I have cut the price in half to $497, one payment. So it's $497 during Women's History Month, right, which is March. However, since you came on this webinar, for the next 3 days, this is like not a joke, for the next 3 days, I have a coupon code for $300 off of the $497 price. It's $497 in the portal because it's half off, but if you use the coupon code, you're literally getting another $300 off. It's for 3 days only. This is Women's History Month, but you decided to be a part of this webinar, and I said I had a bonus surprise for you. And boy, is this a bonus surprise. For those of you who stayed with me, you're getting $300 off, not off of the $997, off of the $497 price. That's why it's only for 3 days. It's off of the $497 price. So guess what? You're getting a $5,000 course for $197. That's not per month. That's one payment of $197 for everything. It's a self-paced course. You start when you want, you end when you want. It's not 1 year or 6 months. It is self-paced. You have it forever. I mean, you can't go wrong with this. Literally, for $197, you're getting just a crazy, crazy bargain, but it's only for 3 days only. After 3 days, you'll still get it for $497, which is half price. So even if you can't pay the $197 in the next 3 days, you're still getting the course for 50% off at $497. But 3 days, $197, that one payment, that's what it is. And so this is what you get: the 12 modules, the 35 lessons, the intro videos, writing every part of the narrative, all of the lessons, all of the grant research techniques, the downloadables, the down printables. It's a crazy price for $197, but I wanted to give you this opportunity in the next 3 days to get it. Again, if not, if you need more than 3 days, it'll be the $497, which again is still 50% off. But if you can pay the $197 in 3 days, use the coupon, the March 300 off coupon, you will be able to get this course for $197. And that's it. For the 3 days, it is going back up to $497, which is a price that you'll see online, but you have to use the coupon code. Be sure when you go into the portal, it will say, do you have a coupon code? Say, well, all you have to do is click that and then put in the code, all lowercase, MARCH 300 OFF. The next group coaching, so if you buy the course, the next free group coaching, which is in a Zoom, is April 11th. So you'll be able to come in free of charge. If you hire my services one-on-one, I charge $200 an hour. So it's best for you to come into the group coaching class because I'm there. I lead that class and you can ask me questions at that time. And so again, at the end of the 12 modules, you will have written a complete grant proposal for your organization. So that's what's most important, because I take you through every part. So for $197, you have a complete grant proposal for your organization or your small business, and you're ready. So you pay $197, right? And then you can write a grant for $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 or more. The $50,000 level becomes important for nonprofits, because that's how much money you need to earn in order to file a regular 990 form. And a lot of foundations look at that when they make determinations as to whether or not they give you grants. Like, are you earning at least $500,000? Well, learn how to write a grant that will bring you $50,000. So pay a little bit of money and be able to be equipped literally with taking this into your own hands, learn it step by step. I'm there with you, even in the class. In every lesson, there's discussion starters. So if you get stuck, you can ask a question and I answer all of those questions. Come into the Facebook group with questions, right? Come into the monthly coaching with questions. We're here to support you and to help you. The Facebook group, like I said, it's incredible. So some of you are asking if it's $197 a month. It is not. It is one payment, people. One payment for $197, and that's only for 3 days. And you'll get the entire course. And so these are just some of the testimonials from Kim. I invested in this program recently. It is amazing. Linda Peavy is a master grant writing guru. Carla says, I am so glad I signed up for the course. It is straightforward and very easy to understand and chock full of information. Paulina says, I would like to thank you for this page in the course. The course was easy to read, listen to, and understand. I've already signed up for notifications from Hello Alice, and the information I received is very helpful. I really appreciate it. Thank you again. Linda says, Ms. Peavy, what a great idea to become a grant service provider. So she decided that she wanted to become a professional grant writer. And so she took the course to become a professional grant writer. And so again, if you want to get the course, it should be put into the chat. Let me just make sure that it is right. It's MARCH 300 off. You cannot go wrong. Make sure you click. And I just want you to be ready, because this amount of money is just so small for you to be able to learn how to get free money. One little investment to learn how to get free money. Again, whether you are a small business or a nonprofit, you can get grant money. And so I am stopping sharing, and I'm going to go to the question. I'm going to start in the Q&A, and I'm going to start from the top. So what if it is a 501c4 nonprofit? Can you get grant money for that? Typically, you have to look at what the requirements of the grant is. Usually they will say 501c3, but they often will also indicate whether or not there are other provisions for which they will provide grant funding as well. So it all depends on what the grant application says. Do you know any company that can help set up your 501c3 step by step? Yes, I do. So I'm going to put into the chat for everyone to see. This is my email address. So I want you to email us and let me know that you need assistance in completing your 501c3. And I have a couple of fabulous companies that will help you step by step to do that. Regarding the amount of time of grant funding, what is the project is going on for the life of the nonprofit? I wasn't sure what to input on the application because the project is aiming to do one. So it doesn't matter what if the organization is aiming to do the project long term, that's fine, right? You're asking for money for a particular amount of time, right? So typically it's for a year. So for a year, how much money do you need? Because you're asking for a grant for a period of 1 year. It's rare that grant funders will give you money for more than 1 year. So for 1 year, how much money do you need? So just base it on 1 year. Do nonprofit staff have to be 18 and older? No. So you can have volunteers. So I want to mention this. You can have an all volunteer staff as a nonprofit and still get grant money. So they don't all have to be 18 and older. To obtain government federal grants, should your small business have you must. So in order to get government and federal grants, you must have a SAMS number. And so to get your SAMS number, you have to register. You have to be registered completely within SAMS.gov. So I'm going to put what you may be thinking about is a DUNS number. So you need a DUNS number. I'm putting this in the chat. And then you have to go to, I believe it's SAM.gov to register in SAM.gov. And so you have to register. Let me do the HTTP. I think that will give you, I think it's SAM.gov. Yeah. So you have to register in SAM.gov. You have to. And you have to have a DUNS number. So that's your first step. Do the grant have to be bullet points? No. How do I apply for a 501c3? So I highly recommend that for 501c3s, you go to either your accountant or your attorney. Highly recommend your accountant or your attorney. Again, if you want a couple of companies that we recommend, you can let us know. Could you explain if you get funded by an organization that has approved you for funding, but they tell you to spend funds first? Send invoices and receipts. Is that accurate? Then okay, so that happens a lot. I'm glad you brought this up. There are some grants where you don't get the grant money first. You have to first spend the money. So let's say you got a $50,000 grant. They want you to first spend the $50,000 and then give them the invoices where you spent the $50,000. And then they will reimburse you. They're called reimbursement grants. They will then reimburse you for the money. Now, one way that will help you with this, if you don't have the $50,000 to spend initially, right, is to ask your vendors for 30, 60, or 90-day terms. And that way, keep in mind, what the funder wants is the invoice. They just want the invoice, right? So try to get 30, 60, 90-day terms so that you get the invoice, so that they know, okay, this is what you're buying, you've been invoiced. Send the funder the invoice, and then you can get the check and then pay the supplier. What about home care businesses? Where to go to look for grants? You can use the grant search engine that I gave in the webinar. There's tons of grants available for home care businesses, but again, utilize the grant search portal, or if you buy the course, it will show you exactly how to use those grant portals to search for funds. I saw one website that said they charge like $30 to apply, and that money will be refunded if no grant is awarded. I researched, and some believe sites like that are a scam. How do I know what to trust? So if someone's telling you that they are going to charge you $30 to write a grant, that should give you reason to run in the other direction, because it takes hours and hours. I have written grants that were 400 and 500 pages long. It takes the time of a professional grant writer to be able to write grants. They need to be compensated for their time and their effort. So no, $30 is not the cost to write a grant. Again, most seasoned grant writers will charge anywhere between $100 to $200 an hour to write a grant, an hour. Even your new grant writers typically charge $25 to $50 an hour to write a grant. So that should give you some idea that if someone's saying they're going to write a grant fee for $30, I would not trust that information. What is the minimum board members for a nonprofit? That depends on the state. So every state has a minimum number of board members that are required for quorum in that particular state. So you have to go to the state to find out. It's different for every state. There's no expiration date to the course. I created an animation company. Congratulations. It's newly started out of my house. It's about 2 months old. I'm waiting on my LLC. Will this help? Well, sure. I mean, so the information that you chose to put on the LLC will maybe even help you fill out some of the grant information. But so you've gotten a great start. So congratulations with that. Do you have to have a virtual address, or can I use my home address? It depends on the grant application. I can tell you though, that a lot of grant applications want a street address. So keep that in mind. They want a street address. And what you maybe can do, I know UPS offers street addresses. Instead of a PO box, they will offer a street address for you. So you might want to look at your nearest UPS in the city where you're located if you want a street address, so you don't want to use your home address. So let me just go back up in the Q&A and make sure I'm answering all questions. I hope to see you all in the course. I hope to see you because I'm in the course a lot. I hope to see you in there. I hope to see you at the Facebook grant coaching session, which is free. I hope to see you in the Facebook group. I hope to see you really taking advantage of this incredible deal, which is going away, so that you can really start learning how to move forward and fund. The money is out there. The money is absolutely out there. There's billions of dollars worth of grants being provided every single year. And a couple of years ago, I think 2008 were the numbers that I last looked. There was over $80 billion in grant money given every single year. $80 billion every single year. It's not that the money's not out there. You have to know the process. And the course takes you step by step through the process. So yes, the course is being recorded. So this webinar is being recorded and you will get a link to the recording. But I want to see you in the course. I ask you to spend the one amount of money to be equipped. Even if you want to hire a grant writer, someone asked about whether or not $30 was a good price for a grant writer. You want to be able to know the questions that a grant writer should ask, right? And this course will get you familiar enough so that you know what should a grant writer be asking me? What is the information that needs to go into an application? So you will get a recording. Yes, you'll get a recording. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad that this has been helpful. We're a 508 nonprofit church, not a 501c3 church. I don't know what the difference is. I know most churches are considered nonprofit. So you really have to look at it may, because if an organization is, so the question is, we're a 508 nonprofit church, is not having a 501c3 going to be a problem in getting grants for you? It may very well be, because if it's specified that you have to be a 501c3 and you're not, that means you're not going to be eligible. So I'm going to advise you, please, please, please take advantage of the $300 bonus. I'm doing this for Women's History Month. You have 3 days. People buy the course, at the higher price. So this is your chance really to get it at a crazy price. Does it make sense for a nonprofit to have a SAM or a DUNS number? Absolutely, absolutely. Because as a nonprofit, it doesn't mean that you can't apply for a federal grant. You still need a DUNS number and a SAMS number. These are totally separate numbers from your 501c3. So the DUNS number and the SAMS number is if you want to apply for federal funding, you need the information. So even if you're a nonprofit, if you want to apply for federal funding, you need a DUNS number and you need to be registered in SAM. I was unable to use the code, so make absolutely sure that it is small letters, MARCH 300 OFF. Okay. Yes, lower letters. Yes, lowercase letters. Don't capitalize anything. Okay, great. Thank you for buying it. You will not regret it. Like I said, it's pretty expensive to hire me one-on-one. I like to see you in the Facebook group to ask me questions, or in the free monthly grant coaching, because I want to see you be successful. I mean, that's at the end of the day, I want you to be able to secure this free money that's out there. And it's out there. What's your take on a financial summary for a smaller or newer nonprofit who can't afford an audit? So if the grant application requests an audited financial statement, and I've done this before, you don't have one, let them know that you still have your current financial documents. I've had some nonprofits say, yes, we will accept the application, even if you don't have the audited financial statement. Others have said, no, we need the audited financial statement. So it depends on the decision of the grantor, but it's worth asking. So I have a concept for an app or software, but I haven't started the development process. Would a demo and website be sufficient to apply for a tech grant, or should I wait until I have everything up and running? It depends on what kind of proof of concept you have. It depends on, because right now you just have a concept for an app, right? So you have to at least be able to show or provide evidence as to why you think this is going to work. I think it would be much easier for you to wait until you have at least a demo and a website. That's going to be the easiest route for you. Nonprofit and not-for-profit are two different things. No, they are not. A nonprofit is a not-for-profit. They're the same thing. Good, great. So I'm going to see, good. Thank you, Kim and Victoria. Jacqueline, I'm going to see you in the group. I want you to be able, so you will get access to the Facebook group after you purchase the course, because it is private. So the Facebook group is just for students. That's what makes it so beautiful. You're working in there right along with other students. It is a private group. So once we see that you have confirmed your purchase, we will give you immediate access to the Facebook group. Okay, thank you. This is, yes, so there will absolutely be a recording. Do you recommend getting minority certified? Yes, I do, because there are some grants that request that you be a minority certified, a minority-owned organization through a minority certification. And so I know here in Ohio, there's a number of ways which you can be minority certified. You can be minority certified through the city, through the state, through the county, but there are other national organizations that also will certify you as a minority-owned organization. And so typically, if that is a requirement of the grant application, they will let you know how they want you to be minority certified. Where does it ask for the coupon code during checkout? So when you check out, underneath the price, whatever you do, don't hit enter with the $497 price showing, because you should be able to, right underneath the price, it will say, do you have a coupon code? And you hit that and put in the code. Only go to checkout if you see the $197 price. Now, if you do that by mistake and you pay the $4.97, don't worry about it. We will have your refund within a few minutes. But look for the, do you have a code? And then you put in the code and then you'll get the $300 off, which again is only for a couple of days. I have a partner that I purchased a program for as well. So would she be able to have access to the Facebook? So the person who has access to the Facebook group is the person who registered and bought the course. So we're going to look for their email address. That email address and that person's name is what gets you access into the Facebook group. If you bought it on behalf of someone else, then send me an email and let me know who you bought it on behalf of. We rarely do that because we want it to be fair to all of the students. So it wouldn't be fair if one student gave us a bunch of names and let people into the group that weren't students. We have to be fair to everyone. So typically we need the email address that you bought the course for and the name of the person that you that you place on the registration page. Okay, so that's fine. So Victoria, send us an email. I'm gonna put our email address into the chat. Just send us an email and we'll take care of that. Okay, so let me see if there are any other questions. I had a question regarding, oh, okay, I think there are a couple of more. Okay, here we are. Hi, my church is the oldest Black Baptist church in the state of Texas. We are on the move to find grants to help us move us forward and upkeep of the church. Okay, so what you're wanting to do, the Lilly Foundation is the perfect foundation because what they do specifically, they just approved of I think it's a $50 million initiative where they will specifically help Black churches to renovate their buildings. That is the sole purpose of this brand new grant from the Lilly Foundation. Now, they've always had a grant for restoration of churches, but literally I just saw this announcement within the last month or so, where it's a brand new initiative where they're solely focused on the renovation of Black churches. And so that's the first place you want to start is the Lilly Foundation. The code is for $300 off of the $497 price. So you'll get the course for $197. That's it. I know people keep thinking that's a monthly fee. It's not. It's I know it sounds crazy, but it's $197 for the one payment. That's just, it's one payment. It's not a monthly payment. But again, you only have the 3 days because the course is going back up to $497. We just reduced half price for Women's History Month. The course is $997. Is there a limit for a for-profit business or recommend max? They should. Oh, absolutely. Never. No such thing as a max on grants. There's no such thing as applying for too many grants. No, never. I have a concept for an app, excuse me, or software. Okay, so I think I answered that question. So can the board of directors be paid staff? No. I was advised to join the U.S. Black Chamber. They will minority. That is true. So the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce will provide you with minority certification for free. That is true. Now, again, that may or may not be the minority certification that particular grant funder wants. You have to abide by what they're asking you to do, but it doesn't hurt. It absolutely doesn't hurt. And then you can say that you are a minority certified organization once you go through the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce's portal. I'm familiar with that, and I've been through that portal before. So I was certified through the U.S. Black Chamber. That was one of my certifications. So I mean, I would absolutely recommend that you do it. I asked a few at the beginning. So Sharia, did I miss some questions? Let's see. I just paid the $197. I see it said coaching. So yes, So the price of the course is $197. If you want to buy one-on-one coaching for me, it's normally $200. If you buy the course, a pop-up will come. So after you bought the course, it will reduce my coaching fee to $125, but you have to buy it. You have to get that when you buy the course. So it will give you an offer to do one-on-one coaching with me for $125 an hour, which is normally $200 an hour. So if you want one-on-one coaching with me for the $125 an hour, after you buy the course, it will give you that option of buying coaching with me for $125 an hour. But the course is $197, so that's all it's going to charge you is $197. So the coaching that comes with the course is 2 levels of coaching. Your Facebook, so you come into the Facebook group, and there you have other students, right? You have other students. Then there's group coaching. So the group coaching with me, you're in a group, and that's through Zoom. So you will get a link. So everyone that bought the course will get a link to the next group coaching. So that does come with the course, but you'll wait for the link. I'll give you a link. You'll receive a link from the company from that. Okay, so I think let me just go back up a bit to make sure I got all of the questions at the beginning. So Andre, someone is interested about your animation company. So this is great. So if you want to respond to the person, someone's interested in your animation company. Okay, so I think I answered. Is it common for some grant companies to charge you for the application? I haven't seen that. I haven't seen any instance where you're going to be charged for a grant application. I haven't seen it. Can a 501c3 be a government contractor? Oh, absolutely. So you still have to be a nonprofit, but a nonprofit can be a government contractor, absolutely. So once you get your 501c3 as a nonprofit, you can serve as a government contractor. Okay, so let me just run back up here and make sure that I've answered all of the questions. And Erica, if you could just put the link to the course and especially the code back into the chat so that everybody will have it. And again, I'm really hoping that you take advantage of the $300 off. It's only for 3 days, and then the course goes up to $497. But again, it'll be $497, which is a great price because that's half off. But if you want it for $197 for 3 days only, just use the code. I think I have answered. Contact the community and reinvestment area of your bank. Absolutely. Absolutely. I have secured grants from banks before for organizations. Absolutely. So that's been my own personal experience where I've been able to get organizations grants from banks. So yes, banks absolutely provide grants. It's just little information that you need to know that's really going to get you to the point where you can start securing money. And that's what I'm here for, is to give you a course that you can utilize that will literally get you money, because it's all about getting free money, but knowing how to get it and making this one small investment to be able to help you secure your future of your organization. Okay, are there grants for churches resident in another country, but whose pastor lives and pastors the church from the US via Zoom? The church partners with a church here in the U. If I were you, I would, so you'll need to do research within the grant search engines that I provided. And again, I gave you a list in the webinar, but there's even more information in the course. let's see. Okay, so two questions here. Someone, I'm sorry, before I have to reread this comment that I just saw, because someone just said the $197 for the course, thank you for saying this, is for vast knowledge of forever feeding your family and community. That's getting me emotional. I mean, that's really getting me emotional, because that's it. Like, that's like this person, thank you, Andre, put this so succinctly. I mean, that's really it. It's paying like less than $200 to literally be equipped with supplying your community with resources to be able, but also to feed your family. If you have a small business, if you're a small business owner, you're supporting your family, right? And to learn how to get free money is one of the best ways you can do that, because so many small businesses, you had no idea that you could get grant money, right? You had no idea. And now you realize that yes, you can. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. That means a lot, you putting it that way. All right, so back to the two questions. Does the letter of support have to be individually written, or can it be written, a pre-written letter? Oh, it can be pre-written, absolutely. It can be pre-written. Is the board the same as a committee? I have a committee, but no, it's not. No, it's not. A board of directors is not the same as a committee. Those are two very different things. And one is governed by the state. So when I say governed by the state decides how many board members you have to have. That's according to the state. But a board of directors has very different responsibilities than a committee. A board of directors, they're there to bring you accountability, and to make sure that the nonprofit is adhering to the mission statement. So those are two very different things. Are your grant writing fees paid up front or taken from the proceeds? Thank you, Leslie, for asking this question, because I get this a lot. And this is so important for everyone who is still on this Zoom to hear. As a professional grant writer, me and other professional grant writers adhere to the ethics and the guidelines of the Association of Professional Fundraisers and also the American Grant Writing Association. In most states, it is illegal to pay your grant writer out of your grant proceeds. I will say that again. In most states, it is illegal to pay your grant writer out of your grant proceeds. That is not what a grant is for. A grant is not to pay your grant writer. And it is unethical for professional grant writers to take a percentage of your grant funding. Now, as a professional grant writer, I was always paid, always upfront, a certain amount. And so most grant writers, and that's why I said from the beginning of the webinar, there are people who write grants and there are professional grant writers. Most professional grant writers were always paid up front. We're paid whether or not you get the money, because we have provided our time and our services and our effort to get you a grant application. It is not up to us whether or not you get the grant. It is up to the funder or the foundation. Our job is to write the absolute best grant application that we can to put you in the best light, to tell your story the best. So that is what we do as professional grant writers. We are paid upfront for our services. We are not paid a percentage of grant money, not at all. And again, in most states, it is illegal to pay a grant writer a percentage of grant money, because the grant money is never to pay the grant writer. It is for whatever program or project that you have talked about, that you have written about on that grant application, is not to pay the grant writer. So I'm so glad that you asked that question. So yes, to work with a professional grant writer, you're always paying them upfront, and you're never paying them out of your grant proceeds, because what if you don't get the grant? Like, besides the fact that it's illegal, what if you don't get the grant? So I've spent a week 2 weeks writing a grant. Like I said, I've written grants that were 400 or 500 pages long. So I spent all this time writing a grant. It's out of my hands. It's not depending upon me as to whether or not you get the grant. But and there are many reasons why you might not get a grant. You don't get the grant, right? And I've committed time and effort, and then I'm not paid. So besides it being illegal, it's not a fair way of conducting business. So it's the 3 by $199 over a span of weeks or months. So you have a choice, right? And I want to be clear because there seems to be some confusion about buying the course. If you use the code, you put the code in, and the course will be $197, period. It is not per month. It is not per week. It is one price of $197. Now, if you don't want to pay $197 and you go into the portal, you have two options. You can pay $497 for one payment, or you can pay $199 for 3 months and you're paying $600. You don't have to do that. You can use the code and pay one payment of $197 if you pay for the next 3 days. Now, let's say you can't pay for the next 3 days and you go the 4th day or the 5th day. Then you have two choices. You can either pay $497 once, or if you want to make payments over 3 months, it's $199 a month. And that way you're paying $600 over the course of 3 months, or you're paying $497 one time. That's only if you can't pay the $197 in the next 3 days. Is there a fee for housing improvement grants via the city of Chicago? I can't answer that question specifically. You would need to look for grants within Chicago. Now, I do want to say, I'm glad you mentioned that, because there are cities that provide grants. And so if I were you, I would go to the mayor's office in the city of Chicago and ask them about housing improvement grants, because there are, especially economic development grants and community development grants. I know there are in Cleveland. So I would advise you to go to your city, go to your council person, because they typically know about those grants. So go to your council person and find out what grants are available in your particular city. So what are the other benefits of purchasing the course? So the course is forever, right? The course will give you a step-by-step method of writing every piece of a grant application, right? So you know how to write it. You get a video, you get the lesson. So at the end of the course, you've written a proposal. You're ready to submit your proposals. I give you a list. If you ask me for a list of 400 funders, I would charge you $500 for that list. There's a list of 400 funders in the course. So you are literally learning how to write a grant, given specific instructions, specific information, and videos and downloadables. And I give you examples. So throughout the course of the course, there's a complete grant application written so that you see, okay, this is how a mission statement looks. So this is how I should be writing about my target market or my target audience. Oh, this is how our budget looks. That's all in the grant course. And also you get support, right? So when you take the lessons, there is a section that is called discussion starters. So if you ask a question in that lesson, I will go in and I will answer that question for you. Plus you get support. So let's say you find a grant, right? And you come across a question that you don't know how to answer. Come to the Facebook group, you'll get an answer. Come to the group coaching, which is in Zoom, you'll get an answer. So our job is to help you get money in any way we can with the course. And that's what the point of the course is. Plus you're getting a $5,000 course for $197 in the next 3 days. When getting business credit, do you have to have a virtual address, or is it, you can use your home address if you want. Again, that's up to you. You might want to use You might want to use a virtual address. That's up to you. Are you familiar with usagrantapplications.org? I know I am not. I installed Grammarly and is already working in the email. Yay! So someone has already installed Grammarly and is working in their email. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you, Andre. Thank you. Will the Lilly Foundation help with church daycare renovation? So it depends on what that means. Are you renovating a daycare center that is within the church? That's a possibility, yes. Does the letters of support always have to be current and date when applying for? No, they don't. They don't have to be current and date. They could be a letter that was given to you a year ago. I mean, you want them to be current, but it's okay if they're dated. That's okay. And I think we're getting down to the end here. Okay, I am learning how to write grants for a friend. Our agreement was that I would get a percentage of grant money on the back end. No, I'm learning that is illegal, unethical. So if a founder can't afford a professional grant writer and I'm learning to help him, what is the appropriate method for me to get compensated for all of the time I am spending? You get paid up front. That's your answer. You get paid up front. What you have to do is separate your time and effort from whether or not they get the grant. You must separate that. You cannot guarantee anyone's going to get a grant. All you can do is write the best grant for them, and you have to be paid for your time and effort. Also, so you might want to think about doing that. I don't know if you want to volunteer your time, but there's an hourly rate. So again, new grant writers make anywhere between $25 to $50 an hour. Mid-experienced grant writers at $50 to $75, and then more seasoned $100 to $200 an hour. But if you're new, there are grant writers that take $25 an hour. So you have to determine, well, how much time do you think you're going to be spending on these grants? But you are deserving to be paid for your time and effort. All right, we're getting to the end here. We're beyond 2 hours. So I think we're going to wrap everything up. I think I've answered every single question. The UPS store is a great option. Yes, it is. If you just want an address to use. I want to thank everybody again for coming on and spending this time tonight with me. I am so hoping to see you in this course. I mean, my friend Andre, I tell you, he just put it best. I mean, it's $197 where you can learn how to feed your family. You can learn how to stop bootstrapping your organization and your nonprofit. Why? When there's free grant money available. Why? Why would you do that when there's free grant money available? You just got to learn how to do it. And I'll show you how to do it step by step. I'll give you examples. I'll give you lessons. I'll give you sessions. I'll give you the free group coaching, just so that, that I can help you be able to fund your passion and your mission. So thank you all so much. I appreciate it. Again, Erica, if you want to put the link into the chat so that everybody has the link and you have the code. Again, no cap letters for the code, no cap letters. You just want to put in the March. Oh, there we go. Thank you so much. The March 300 OFF is what you want to put in. So if you have any questions, email us. So I'm going to just quickly put in the email address for any information that you might have, any troubles that you might have, paying for when you go in to pay, any problems. If you accidentally didn't put in the code and it charged you $497, send us an immediate email and we will refund you the difference literally within a couple of minutes. So thank you everyone so much. Look for a replay within the next day, probably tomorrow. You should get a replay. But people, I want to see you. I want you to do this. I want you to do this. Not for me. It's not for me. It's for you, because I don't want to hear any more horror stories about people saying that somebody told them they was going to write a grant for $30. I don't want to. Equip your hands, equip your mind. You can do this. You can do this. You can write these grants. That's the name of the course, Grant Writing for Non-Professionals. You don't have to be a professional grant writer. I will teach you and show you what you need to do. I've been doing this for 14 years. I've secured over $17 million for not just nonprofits, but for small businesses. So I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. So it's a process. Come and learn the process. Come and learn the process with us. And thank you again so much. Again, send me any questions that you might have. Have a blessed and a safe evening. And I hope to see you in the Facebook group or in the one-on-one, the group coaching session. So bye-bye, everyone. Thanks again.